Hmm? Ah!
You're listening to the Run for Your Lives podcast.
Hey everyone! Welcome to the show. I'm Daphne.
And I'm Pake.
And this is the Run for Your Lives podcast.
This episode is the supernatural horror film Insidious Chapter 2, directed by James Wan and released September 13th, 2013. And
wow.
Yeah, we're back in the world of Insidious pretty quickly. Same season, because I didn't want to wait to do it like once a season, because it's going to take forever. So we're back.
You know what's cool about rewatching this one now? Is we just went to the movies and saw Insidious, The Red Door.
Mm-hmm.
So it was fun to do this one. 10 years in between seeing the Lambert family. Because, of course, in the movie franchise, number 3 and 4... there is no Lambert family, so this is our last chance to see them until the Red Door.
Yeah.
So.
It was kind of fun that it works out that way, because without spoiling anything for the Red Door, for those who have yet to go see it, this movie plays a really big role in that one. There's a lot of tie-ins and callbacks. The way that this movie ties in and calls back a lot of the stuff in the first one, Red Door does that to this movie, so it's really kind of fitting.
Yes. It really is. And that was the first time that you and I got to go to the movies together.
Yeah.
So that was a lot of fun. We were in person. I was in Dallas, so we got to go to the movies. And yeah, it kind of continued to light this Insidious fire so that we can get through these movies and get to the Red Door when it comes out on streaming, because I just have so much to say about it. And so I'm going to keep that locked away behind the Red Door.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll just focus in on Insidious Chapter 2. I think my final comment about the Red Door will be this. It's very cool to see Ty Simpkins as a child, and then now, like, he's grown up now.
I enjoyed watching Ty Simpkins when he was younger. You know, my Insidious being the first time I saw him, and then Insidious 2 here, and then he went on and did Jurassic World. And maybe that's it. I can't think of anything else right off the top of my head to pull him out of. Iron Man 3. Iron Man 3 for sure. And so, yeah, seeing him there. And then he's a little bit older, makes a very small, tiny cameo in Endgame. But yeah, as an adult actor, young adult actor now, I'm seeing a lot more range and different stuff from Ty Simpkins that, like, I'm really excited, because it's not often, you see, like, a young kid in movies and you're like, oh, I wonder what they're gonna, like, go on to be, and then you never really see them again. A lot of kids don't stick around in the business for one reason or another, and
right.
Maybe sometimes that's for the best. That's good for them to just live, like, a life that they want to live. But then every now and then you do get to see some of these, like, kid actors that, like, now that they grow up and do some really cool stuff. Because I'm going to give some big, props to Ty Simpkins. Again, reprising the role of Dalton Lambert in Red Door. But also The Whale with Brendan Fraser. Oh my God. His role in that movie, he is incredible. So it took me a second. I was like, oh my God, that's Ty Simpkins. And then, like, it's just like, this is awesome. And so, yeah, I really, now that he is an adult and continuing to act, I'm excited to continue to see what he does.
Yeah, it's pretty incredible. He'll always be Little Gray from Jurassic World for me, but I'm getting used to him being Dalton, especially because we just covered Insidious not that long ago. We saw the Red Door, and then we're covering Insidious 2 tonight. So, yeah. It's been really cool. But I feel like we have to dive into Insidious Chapter 2 the way that we always dive into everything, with a little bit of production notes. was filmed at Linda Vista Hospital, Hollenbeck Park, West Adams, and Victoria Park in Los Angeles, California. This is the second installment to the Insidious movie series. The screenplay was written by Leigh Whannell. And you know that James Wan, Leigh Whannell, created the story for this movie and for the sequels. The cast from the film was also the same cast from the first one, with a few additions. The budget was $5 million, and it grossed $161.9 million.
It's kind of a bit of a profit margin there.
Yeah.
Just a little good. A little good.
I feel like that's why we have Chapter 3, Chapter 4, or The Lost Key, and then The Red Door. So that's why we have those. It's kind of cool when you look at all that they did in this series and then also realize that Wan is behind The Conjuring. And all that's been going on with that series. It's pretty amazing what he's done and Leigh Whannell have done for horror. It's really exciting.
Yeah. Which, I said this when we covered the first Insidious earlier this season. I do plan on trying to make, a point that we're going to cover all of his Conjuring movies at some point, spread them out in the future. We'll get through these first and give us, we don't have to get to them right away, but I would like to dive into that world, and this podcast gives me a good excuse to dive into things all the time. So, because I've still only watched the first Conjuring movie and have not gone any further past that. So it's, at this point, I'm like, well, I might as well hold off until I have a good podcast reason to really dive into it.
And you know what? It's my job to make sure you have a good podcast reason for it. I'll make sure to put it on the schedule. Before the end of this year, we will discuss at least the first Conjuring, if not Conjuring 1 and 2. That's my idea. That's my plan.
Works for me.
We'll see. Although we don't want to just become a James Wan fan podcast by covering all of his stuff.
I guess there's nothing really wrong with that. He's done a lot of great stuff.
He really has. He's pretty brilliant. So, Pake, can you give us a synopsis of Insidious Chapter 2?
The Lamberts believe that they have defeated the spirits that have haunted their family, but they soon discover that evil is not beaten so easily.
Ooh. Is that IMDb or is that from your brain?
What do you think?
I don't know. I'll have to check later then, I guess.
Okay. You're not going to give me credit automatically with coming up with something that good?
Well, the thing is, you use IMDb a lot, and I'm assuming it came from there, but I don't know. There are times that you come up with something really, really good. So, I don't know. And you're not going to tell me, so...
No, it was IMDb. Yeah. No, it was IMDb.
It was? Okay. All right, then that's good. All right. It's fine. It works, right?
But I can pretend that to take credit for a minute. I'll be good with that.
Okay. If it makes you happy.
Sure. All right. Well, let's get into the meat of this one. Talk about these. As we always do when it's just me and Daphne. Character-wise, arcs and stuff like that, and she puts up on our doc here this order of characters that then I look at and go, yeah, I don't think so. We'll figure out how to go around there. Again, I don't know, it's not necessarily that they're underwriting female characters, because there's a lot about Elise and stuff in here. It's just that Rose Byrne's Renee is just kind of a character that things happen to versus things that she does. So there's not really a lot to talk about. So I'm like, well, if we start with her, I literally have 3 notes. And they're really small.
Yeah, I don't think we can start with her. I think the heart of this is still Josh.
Right.
Because it's his story, and we got that backstory.
But then when you say Josh, it also depends, because there are 2 very different versions of Josh. One of them's not Josh. And so I have full note sections of Josh. Or do we want to talk about Parker Crane as a main character? Because that's really who that is.
That introduction to Parker Crane and understanding, the psyche behind him. And then seeing Josh kind of be Parker Crane, like be inhabited by the ghost of Parker Crane. It was pretty mind-blowing at times because the more we went into the movie, the more we learned about Parker and his life and his crazy mother and what she put him through, and that things were really not his fault. Like, I don't feel that the result, his metamorphosis into this serial killer, I don't think you can blame him for all of that, because his mother was whacked. I mean, she raised him as a girl, and he was a boy, and he was screaming that he was a boy, and she was adamant and punished him. That was really rough to watch, like seeing what he went through as a kid. I took that to heart. It was really sad. And so it did help me understand a little bit more, though, about why he was driven to do the things that he did, at least before his demise.
Yeah, there's an interesting stuff, about Parker Crane. Very interesting story to where, he is a main character of this movie, for sure. To where, when it says, do we want to talk about Josh Lambert? It was like, well, I have a whole section to talk about Josh Lambert and the things he goes through. But it is a very completely different, separate point and, like, conversation of, do we want to talk about Parker Crane? Not just his past, but everything that he does in this movie as Josh Lambert, taking possession of the body and assuming the identity of Josh Lambert throughout this movie.
Mm-hmm. I think then we start with Josh Lambert, and then we segue into Crane. And then we segue back to Josh if we need to. But I don't think it's going to be much of a segue. Mm-hmm. Like, back.
Yeah, I mean, because with Josh, I will go beginning to end, literally from him as a kid to where he ends this film back in his own body. And then we can circle back and talk. So okay. Easy enough. That's the thing, is we don't have to talk about everything in chronological order, because
if
you're listening to this, we assume you've watched the whole movie, and we're not going to worry about spoiling things for you. We're going to talk about things as they, as they work with characters. So, Josh Lambert, we'll start there, because, Patrick Wilson, incredible, which I will say it was cool to see Patrick Wilson getting to reprise a character, but then also play that character in a fully different way as a different character. It's very well done.
Yeah, I appreciated that a lot. I liked that we got to see him in his normal Josh Lambert world, but then also as a man possessed. We get to see a totally different side of him, and he pulled off both of them so well.
Yes, it was very good. I could have sworn that the kid playing young Josh was the exact same kid that we saw in, like, the photographs and when they were in the further briefly in the first movie, but apparently not. And so my mind was kind of blown. I was like, dang, the casting is good enough to where I just, like, was convinced it's the exact same kid. Then I do go back and look at it a little bit, and then it's like, okay, now that I know, I can look at this movie and see that, like, when they're looking through the photos with the, like, woman in black, Parker Crane, standing behind him. I was like, okay, they've edited the face to have this kid, Garrett Ryan, that's playing young Josh in this movie. His face has been edited onto the original photos from the first movie. I'm like, okay, I can see that now. But without looking into that, as I did just as a podcaster, looking into certain things, I was like, my first watch of this a couple weeks ago, whatever, I was like, oh, it's the same kid. That's cool. No, but close enough. It was good casting either way.
I think the casting was great overall anyway.
Yeah.
Because Jocelyn Donahue, who played the young Lorraine, her side profile, there were just moments where I was just really blown away by her resemblance and mannerisms to Barbara Hershey. I really liked that. I think that was great casting.
So we see with young Josh here, this movie plays a lot with a concept that is mentioned very briefly in the first movie. That if people remember when Elise is talking about the further, and there's just a throwaway line almost while Dalton is in there and she's explaining what's going on to Renee and Josh, where she says the time works differently there. And it's just a quick little line that is said in the first movie and then moved past. And we don't think about it. But they take that concept and make that a huge part of this movie. We get that scene where Elise is trying to kind of hypnotize Josh and work with him and explaining to the younger Lorraine what's happening to her son the same way that we see her explaining these things to Josh and Renee in the first movie about Dalton. And then young Josh stands up and just, looking over his shoulder and has that, I'll show you. And he gets up and he points to this door that seemingly opens by itself. And it's a really frightening visual that you're like, at first you're like, what is happening? What's going on? This is weird.
Yeah.
Then, of course, it all makes sense when we understand it later, but it introduces, without us knowing it, if this is your first time watching that part, you don't realize, but that is introducing this concept of time works differently there. And we see it come back around later, which is really interesting.
Yeah. I noted that right away, that I really loved that they gave us that visualization of exactly what was happening and the tiebacks to the last movie. I really embraced it, honestly. I thought that it was clever to do it the way that they did.
Mm-hmm. And then this becomes not really talking about Renee much, but a little bit, but this then feels familiar to the first movie where, okay, things are settling down a little bit. Like, okay, we've got our family back together. Dalton's awake. Everything's okay. We're dealing with the police situation of Elise's death and there's still some trauma, but it's like, we're trying to settle down and get things back to normal. And then the creepy stuff starts happening with the baby walker music coming on and the piano playing and these things that are happening. And you're like, oh God, we're just going to jump right back into it. Now, of course, on a second watch or looking at it in hindsight, when you realize it's Josh the whole time there, it's less creepy. He's just trying to get her attention. Mm-hmm. But it's still, you're like, they throw you back in there. And then, of course, the mother is also there too later. And then that stuff does get terrifying. But, but then it made me think, because, the music, piano's playing and then the baby's crying upstairs and it makes you think of the first movie, but then it's Josh. And I was like, wait, so is the real Josh in the further grabbing and moving his daughter out of the crib? Because that's a little scary and strange too.
It is.
You think that's helping your wife? That's just going to freak her out more, dude.
Yeah, I thought that was real creepy. I liked that, like I said, the way that they just put it all together in there. And you watch the first movie and you don't even consider all of this. You're blind to it. And then they give it to you here and you're just like, okay, I need to go back and watch the first one again. Knowing everything I know now, I've got to go back and rewatch the first one because this is all blown my mind. Mm-hmm. Knowing that how it worked out.
Well, yeah, with that scene later, but then even before, just in this movie where it takes place in this one, where the piano's playing and stuff, where it's the real Josh in the further trying to get his wife's attention, being like, that's not me. What are you doing?
Exactly. But she realizes that it's not him at some point too.
Yes. Yeah. So it said, the police dealing with stuff. The fact that the marks that are on Elise's neck don't match Josh's hands is weird. They should.
Incredibly, yeah, because he's been possessed.
Yeah. So I will say I love this movie. I think it's very amazing creatively. There are a lot of plot holes. I will point some of them out as we go that I think the writing, I don't know if lazy is the right way to call it, because I hate to say something about that Lee Wanell did. But it's not very tight. There are a lot of plot holes or things that are and then we yada 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 it to get to this point where it's there's a lot of explanations that are just not there, that are off screen. Things happen. It's I would like to know how they got from point A to point B, but they just moved past it to get to the story. And I'll accept it because overall it's still a great story with great characters and some very creative writing, to where it's not as good as the first movie because it's not as tight, but I still really enjoy it.
Yeah. Well, I think that not everyone can be perfect every time. And Leigh Whannell was involved with the writing of the entire series, like, from the beginning to the end. So I think I have mad respect for him in that case, because not very often does, one of the creative minds stay involved. Sometimes it just shifts off completely, or like that one series where after a certain number of movies, another studio took it over and did their own thing with it. I'm happy that Whannell stayed, and Wan was still involved in some capacity.
Well, he directed this one.
He did. It's the last one he directed. He directed 1 and 2. I think having him involved, or having them involved, is really important, because you don't lose sight of the original story when you're doing that. Other sequels and other, movie franchises are not as lucky.
Right, for sure.
To have that connection.
Yeah, to where even, because I'll say, we're going to cover all of these Insidious movies to get through the Red Door. I'm going to go ahead and tell you now, the first one is still my favorite overall. With the caveat that I will need to watch the Red Door again to really assess, and break that one down a little more, be able to watch it at home and pause and think about things and stuff versus just watching it in the theater one time. So I'll say the first Insidious is my favorite of all of them, with a little asterisk next to Red Door being I need to spend a little more time with that one. But
agreed. One time is great for like an initial reaction or initial thoughts, but you really do need to watch it again to really be able to, like you said, pause it and immerse yourself in it. Take notes and be thoughtful about, what you really think of something.
Yeah.
Instead of, oh yeah, it was great. It's another, Wan 1L movie, blah, blah, blah. No, you have to think about it more. And yeah. So you guys will have to check back in, I don't know, maybe 6 months.
Probably won't
Might
even
be
that
6
long
months.
when it's out, but yeah.
I know what's going to happen. It's going to come out on streaming, and then you're going to start pushing me to do Insidious Chapter 3 so that we can get to it.
Probably, yeah.
Have we ever covered an entire film franchise in one season? We did.
The Monsterverse, when we were trying to get to Godzilla vs. Kong, we did it.
That is true. Yeah. So, we could do it again. It's just going to leave, the Lambert's going to dominate the end of year movie awards.
Maybe.
I don't know. Maybe. I guess we'll see.
Oh, yeah. So what I was saying. So yeah, those little things where you're like, yada, yada, yada. But again, in the overall thing, you can kind of or not appreciate it, but, ignore it and move on and be like, it's fine. Like I said, the hand marks they just have this little scene thrown in where the detective calls and is like, well, the hand marks don't match your husband. And then we never hear about it again. Which
I thought that was really odd and kind of uneven.
Right. Like, I could see if they'd be like, okay, let's just like write this whole side problem out of the story because we have way too much other stuff to deal with. We don't need to complicate it unnecessarily. Right. However, then, we never get any answer of what the investigation officially decides. There's never any kind of like, well, then who killed Elise? What did the police think? What are the, it's like, well, it wasn't your husband, but we're not sure, and now you'll never hear from us again.
Somebody killed her.
All of those things must have taken place in the years after this. But then Dalton and Josh don't even remember Elise, so that's got to be a confusing part of that. It's just never touched on again.
Yeah, that's one of my notes we can talk about later, about this whole idea of the Men in Black syndrome, where you erase your memory.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know about that, but we can talk about that a little bit later.
Yeah. But I really don't have I have lots of other Josh notes, but nothing from this beginning. I skip, like, most of the whole movie until I get to, like, the final part when I get to Josh. Because that's like, yeah, we've established he's practically a ghost. His soul has been replaced in his body, and now he's floating around in the, other dimension, in this, like, liminal space within the house, trying to get his wife's attention. And that's just kind of where he lives the whole movie until Carl astral projects without him even knowing that he does, and winds up working with him, and they have to get Elise. So then we get that part of the story.
Carl.
Yes. Carl is great. Steve Coulter, anytime I see him, it's always a good time.
Anytime he's in it, I know. It's so good. I appreciated that we got this backstory, that we, got more of the young Josh and what happened mixed in with all the craziness of adult Josh and the things that he was doing. So I really appreciated that. And how, the Lamberts they're basically going to Josh's childhood home. And I'm thinking to myself, he was already doing this there. What makes you think that going to this house is going to, of course they're going to find him there. Mm-hmm. Because they're going to follow them wherever they go. But to be in the childhood home, that's another place where stuff like this happened. So I would think maybe a hotel? I don't know.
Right. I don't know. You know how many ghosts are floating around in a hotel?
Well, the Overlook.
Right. But yeah, so then Josh himself in this other space and in the further, with Carl, who is knocked out by Parker Crane inhabiting Josh there. And I guess when he gets knocked out, again, there's a lot of things that, my notes can say, I guess this happens. Sure, we'll go with it.
I thought he died.
Yeah.
I thought he was dead, and I was so disappointed.
Yeah.
Because I forgot. I only watched this one time, and so rewatching it now, I forgot that he lived.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm like, oh my God, Carl's dead. I don't want him to die. He's a cool character.
Yeah. But he gets knocked out by Parker, and then I guess, accidentally astral projects when he gets knocked out. I guess that's a thing you can do. I guess there's accidental, and we see Dalton later, he's woken up by these spirits, and, he doesn't mean to astral project. Next thing he knows, he's standing next to his body, and he's like, oh shit, I gotta get back in there. So I guess it happens with enough, trauma. But Carl thinks he's dead. He's just like, well, if you're here, I know where I am, so, that sucks, I guess. But it's while we're here, let's, find Elise, get in, go into the further, find her, because we need her help to get you back to your body. They're walking through the further, and Carl's, Elise! Elise! And the other ghosts can hear him, and there's that's a very bad idea!
Bad idea! I love that.
This podcast has so many Jurassic Park 3 callbacks that will live forever.
I know. And I love it. Every week there's especially one that goes back. But it seems like we always go back into Jurassic Park 3. And I was just thinking of a movie that we need to cover in the near future that has Téa Leoni in it. And I'm thinking, oh my God, we have to do that soon.
Works for me. But yeah, then we talked a little bit about the sequence while Carl and Josh are in the further. The ultimate time works differently. Example. We take the haunting scene from the first movie that maybe doesn't really make sense in the context of, okay, well, we have this demon who's trying to possess Dalton's body, and there are a couple other ghosts and demons have made their way in the house. But why are they banging on doors and opening doors and doing certain things? Now we know the baby situation, that really was this other demon.
Oh, that demon has a name, Pake.
Yes.
It's the long-haired fiend.
Yes. We talked about that, I think, in the first one.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of little things that you're like, but why did those things happen if it's just these ghosts trying to inhabit Dalton? And so they take some of those questions that maybe didn't make sense in the first one, and they make it make sense. Because while Josh is in the further, he's got your baby, which is what Renee hears over the baby monitor in the first movie, is this other ghost in the further warning Josh when he sees him, and he's pointing at the house. So then Josh goes to his old house in this dimension, and he actually then becomes the cause of the banging on the door and the alarm getting set off in the scene that's so tense in that first movie. Because it's actually which it gets crazy and it feels like it should be hard to follow, but it's really not.
No.
It's Josh from the future, but in the further, where time doesn't make sense, trying to warn and help his wife and past self from this demon who actually is in the house messing with their baby the whole time. It's very creative, and I appreciate and love that scene. This is like my favorite sequence of this movie because it's so well done and so creative.
Yeah, and if you go back to watching it in the first movie, it's like a punctuation mark.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's something that you realize just how clever it is. And it just makes me wonder how much Leigh Whannell had planned out for Insidious 2.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Yeah,
I'd have to
I don't know.
See if I could find something, or maybe I'm sure there's an interview or something out there somewhere. Maybe we just get Whannell on here ourselves.
Yeah, that sounds like a great idea.
But yeah, to ask, like, was this pre-planned when doing Insidious, or was it literally like something within the script writing of Insidious Chapter 2 where you go, wait a minute, what if we go back and kind of add to that and make it something? I don't know.
Yeah, I'm curious.
And then Elise appearing in the house right then, in the further, to help Josh when he's battling with this demon, because she did hear, she was the Spinosaurus hearing the calls, and showed up. And then another kind of part that's weird to me, but so then Josh needs to go back to the Crane house where Parker's memories are to draw him out of Josh's body. Again, there's a lot of, sure, just run with it. Doesn't make any sense, but we'll just go with it to get to where we need to get. I guess because Josh now as an adult is so far removed from the connection to Parker Crane that he wouldn't remember where the house is, so now he has to go to the young version of himself that's closer to that pool of Parker Crane. Again, why would young Josh know where Parker Crane's house is, even in the further? Like, I don't know why that makes sense, but it does. Again, a lot of plot holes.
Yeah, I'm not sure either. I feel like there might be some deleted scenes that
I was wondering that same thing too. Is like this. I have this on DVD, and I don't know. I looked at the bonus features, and there was some making of and stuff in there. I didn't watch them. I didn't have time today, but I didn't see a lot of like any deleted scene stuff. So I'm curious about it though. That there has to be some other stuff that explained these things that just ended up getting left on the cutting room floor for one reason or another. But it does bring in that fun concept of time, at least, even if the reason doesn't make a lot of sense. It gets us to that full circle. Josh talking to his younger self, asking, how do I find Parker's home with his memories or the old woman, and Josh standing up saying, I'll show you, leading them, and they open the door. And I love Elise's, oh, so that's what that was about. Remembering that initial interaction when she was younger, I thought was a fun little line there.
Yeah. There were so many little connections. I think it kind of kept me from focusing on all of the little loose ends or things that weren't connected.
There's a lot of loose writing and plot holes that like should make me really mad. But then the stuff that's creative and well done is so creative and well done that I can kind of forgive it and be like, as a whole, I appreciate this and what it's doing. Because even, we get the red door motif again. They go into the red door to traverse to the further to find Crane's home, which again, question, Carl was literally just there in real life. So why couldn't he just tell them where it was?
I kind of think that they made a mistake because this movie could have been Insidious 2, Back to the Further.
Mm-hmm.
But, and that might have been a little silly, but I don't know. I just thought it was funny when I was thinking of it.
It's a good one. Yeah, of course, Team Further gets to the Crane house, encounter Mother.
Oh, God.
Mater Mortis, right?
Mother of Death.
Who, just kind of pushes back and locks Carl and Elise in another room away, leaving Josh to kind of face her on his own. And then again, they just like, go over these things, because it's like, well, then Elise runs into young Parker and then says, I need you to help me destroy your mother's memory. And then we don't see anything that happens after that. We never see the little boy again. But now Elise has somehow he helped her, I guess, because now she's there beating the ghost of the mother to death with a rocking horse. So, of beating her to re-death.
That's pretty badass.
Sending her to hell like she did with the long-haired fiend.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just like, well, how do we get from point A to point B? It's like, Elise is locked away outside the door. Has little Parker help her, but then we don't see any of that take place. Next thing you know, she's just there with a rocking horse. It's like, I want to see, how do we get from point A to point B in these scenes? Because it leaves me a little confused.
Well, and little Parker we only saw like twice. Right. We see him with the wig, and his mother is like being mean to him. Then we see him later with Elise. We really don't see him that much, other than I think there was one other time, but we don't realize it's him, where Specs and Tucker have the camera upside down. Like, I think it's not much.
Right.
And I would have liked to have seen what, like you said, what happened. And it just seems like there's something deleted somewhere that would have made it make more sense.
Right.
What we really need is a director's cut.
I feel like now, because I've seen every movie in the Insidious franchise at this point, so I know that it hasn't happened. But I feel like you could all do a whole nother full circle thing with the young Parker Crane being a character where it's like, well, the reason he like still has his mother with him when he's inhabiting Josh is because he feels guilty about causing Elise to destroy his mother. So now that he's back in the real world, he can conjure her spirit to come back and like, like there's like things that you can still build those connections.
I agree. I think that there's a story to be told there, and maybe that they've decided to end the franchise or end this phase of Insidious and the Lambert family, with whatever happens in the Red Door. Maybe that could be like closing the door for them or not. But why not continue the Insidious franchise by going in the Parker Crane direction?
Yeah, I don't know.
I feel like
also it's like, do you really want, even though he was so traumatized as a kid, which again, I don't know, as much as like you want to feel bad for like him as a little kid and the trauma he went through, he still grows up to become like a serial killer and like with no remorse. He kills 15 people.
So, yeah. And we get to see. And I'm just wondering about that, though. We see the 15 people or the women. Have their bodies never been discovered?
Guess not. I guess they've just like been in this hidden room behind the bookshelf the whole time.
I think the smell would have gotten to a neighbor or something by now.
Yeah, because clearly they could smell it when they first walked into the house.
Oh my god, it made him... it was not good. Yeah, Tucker did not have fun with that. No. That was a problem.
But yeah, so with Josh, the defeat of the mother there, then Josh and Carl have to hightail it back to their bodies, their mortal bodies, which they do thanks to that awesome little traveler, Dalton Lambert. That kid is incredible.
So brave. So brave and so smart to take the can with him.
Yes.
So he kind of had like a breadcrumb or a way to get back.
Yeah. He's literally like tethered himself back to the mortal world. Yeah.
Yes. So good. So good. So smart.
Yeah.
He didn't have tons to do in this movie, but he had enough to do.
Yeah.
Like, it really connected. Where his father did it for him in the first film, it was great to see Dalton return the favor in this one to go and get his dad and show that, the Lamberts are pretty brave people.
Yeah, that we know that Dalton has experienced a lot of horrific things in the further and that he's willing to go, I'm the only one that can help. So I'm going to do this. I'm going to go and find him and I'm going to bring him back.
Yeah.
But so after it's all over, we get, in order to leave this terror behind, Josh and Dalton have Carl hypnotize them into forgetting everything about the further, their projection, Elise, all of it. And we know that it works, and their family doesn't deal with any more supernatural issues for a very long while. I don't know, probably 9 years or so, if I have to go out on a limb and say, I guess.
don't know about this whole memory suppression thing. Like, I get the traumatic event, maybe for Dalton. Like, maybe he needed to be hypnotized, but I don't know that it's a good idea to do it for Josh. Because I don't think it's right, honestly, for Renee to have to carry all of this herself. Like, it's not okay to put this all on her.
And so, maybe
to watch for the signs.
Those concerns that you show, maybe we'll have those addressed in the future. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge, perhaps. So, yeah. But yeah, I mean, I can see it as like they're kind of trying to, it's like self-protection of like, well, if we can't project, we can't remember these things, if these things can't be in our heads, then there's no connection to the further. There's no connection to the spirit realm there, and they can't come back to us. Our family will be done with it.
Mm-hmm. And I get that. I get that they would want to be able to move on. I mean, they thought they were going to get to. They really thought that they were, they were ready to go back to regular lives after they got Josh and Dalton back from the further the first time. Mm-hmm. And then it just all went to hell. So they didn't have that opportunity. No chill time.
No, not in this one. This one is like right after the first movie. There's no chill time.
No downtime. But again, we knew something that Josh's family didn't know. We know what Elise saw. So we knew that it wasn't really Josh. We knew that it was the mother of death, or Parker Crane. We knew it was Parker Crane.
Yeah.
We didn't know it was Parker Crane, but we knew it was something.
It was this old woman, this veiled...
The old woman.
Bride in black, right? Yeah.
The bride in black.
Which, speaking of that segues right into Parker Crane part of this, because I'm done with Josh himself. But then we have the whole other movie from the other Josh. The not Josh. And again, we hear it in the first movie, and then even here in those flashbacks again with young Josh and the younger Lorraine, where the young Elise there, saying to Lorraine, it wants to be him. And jump a little bit ahead in the movie with things that would get, revealed to us that yes, the old woman, quote unquote, Parker Crane, who was forced to dress as and act like a girl for his psychotic mother, that ends up becoming a serial killer as an adult, donning the dress and the veil as a disguise. And now in the afterlife, this evil spirit of Parker Crane wants to possess the body and the life of Josh Lambert in order to kind of reclaim the childhood that he never had. Of course, he has possessed Josh in this movie, but Josh is an adult himself now. So I guess he's just obsessed with Josh at this point. In general, it's not really the youth that's the goal. It's just, he's been focused on Josh for all these years. So that's been his goal. I don't think he's necessarily too worried about taking over the life of like a little boy anymore. He's like, that's moved on. That ship sailed. But, there's still Dalton in the house. But at least in the first movie, he's spoken for. I don't think any other spirit's going to challenge the lipstick face demon for possession of a body.
I wouldn't.
That demon called Dalton, so we're not going to worry about that one.
Yeah, definitely not. Definitely not. The non-Josh, which is the possessed Josh.
Literally in my notes, I just call him Parker most of the time because it's what it is.
Parker?
Yeah.
So Parker, he gets all of these, it's like his mother telling him, you have to kill them, you have to kill them, you have to kill them.
Right, like even in the afterlife, she's still controlling who he is and what he's doing.
Yeah, and he keeps saying no, like he's like, no, 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 no. Until near the end when he, gets a knife and decides to carve up Carl.
Yeah, which Parker possessing Josh is a very convincing actor for the first parts of the movie. Like, he's kind of just filling that role. I'll take the boys to school and playing with the kids and running around and how's things going. We're back to normal. It's just like it kind of makes you think for a little bit on a first watch of this. It's like, oh, maybe Josh is Josh himself again. Like the possession didn't take.
Yeah.
Like it makes you kind of question for a little bit because he's a good actor until he starts literally falling apart. And not so much. Good. But I feel like Parker is actually really enjoying playing this role of loving and caring father. It's maybe not what he ever had in mind originally. Like younger Elise says that he wants to be Josh because it's the childhood, it's the boyhood he never had. But I think now he's well, even if that's moved on, he's like, it still makes sense that he'd want to attach to this father role where it's a normal family, a loving relationship with a child. Give those kids what I never had with my mother.
He can be the father that he never had. He can be the support system that he didn't have as a child. Except that his mother's voice is still in his head telling him to kill them. Mm-hmm. And I think it was only a matter of time before he did.
Well, yeah. I
mean, he goes after them at the end. He chases them, and Renee is very smart the way that she, bolts everything as much as she can and tries to, close stuff down. But, Parker, aka Josh, is relentless in trying to get there. If he can't get through, he's going to bang another way.
Yeah. So I think that's why we see with that transformation, like that Parker is not the sympathetic character, really, because you feel like, oh, he just wants a normal life, he just wants this, but his mother won't leave him alone. But really, because his teeth are falling out, and so, oh, your dead soul is killing his living body, and you have to kill them to live, and he's more than willing to do that by the end of the movie, where, okay, so maybe, it's this pipe dream of, have this life, have a family. But really, in the end, it's selfish. He just wants to be alive again at the expense. Mm-hmm. Yeah, he'll kill these people. He'll kill this woman and her children to live for himself. So he still really is the villain ultimately at the end.
Oh, yeah. And he even talks about feeling pain, like what it's like to feel pain after not feeling it for so long, and how different, how great it is to be able to feel something again after being in the further for so long and not being able to, not being in the world and having to live in this place that's just so soul-sucking.
But then he follows that up with, but it still feels even better to inflict it on other people. So he's enjoying what he's doing.
Yeah.
But yeah, we see he's battling with this mother in his head. Lorraine sees the mother in the house and then runs into fake Josh Parker, who tells her, no, you didn't see anything. Even if you did, you didn't. Keep it to yourself because we're going to save Renee the stress, and we're not going to, which really what he's doing is he's trying to push things aside. He's still dealing with his mother telling him what to do. And it's like, no, this is my thing now. Don't ruin this. And then he's also dealing with real Josh also trying to contact his wife and be like, no, I pushed you out. I took over your life. Why don't you just deal with it and go away?
I think it's kind of cool the way that one of the ways that Josh was trying to connect with Renee was through playing a song that she wrote for him. Mm-hmm. Only I think she says at the end, oh, only you could play it that badly. Yeah.
I should have known.
And I thought that was kind of cute.
Yeah, I did. I smiled and kind of laughed at that line. It's fun. Again, interesting that there are little things that you're like, how long was Josh the target, or was it happenstance? Because we see there's this interesting little thing that before young Josh was being haunted by this old woman ghost, the living Parker Crane had grabbed him while he was in the hospital room with his mother, that there was already a connection, some kind of pull that Parker Crane felt towards this boy. So then there's this other layer of now this dead Parker in the further has this connection to Josh. And so Josh is already kind of this obsession. And then when he can see Josh in the further projecting, he's like, I know who that is. There is a connection there, which is maybe how he even found him in the furthers, because there was already this little connection when he was alive.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, I think that it's almost like Josh imprinted on him or something. And so it was just a continued obsession. Because he knew he was special. The whole astral projection piece of it, I think, was appetizing for him.
Yeah. And then, we get the ghost rules. We talked about that a little bit, that, sure, we'll go with it, that he has to kill to keep himself alive for some reason. Of course, at first he doesn't want to, and he's kind of arguing with the mother there, but his desire to keep living as Josh is strong, and like I said, eventually the selfishness of that wears on him and wins out in the end, where he's like, fine, I'll kill these people if I can just continue living. That's what I really want. I don't need to be a dad, I don't need to be a husband, I just need to live. Yep.
He changes his mindset because I think he just gets worn down, really, and his mother just doesn't shut up. She's such a bitch. She is. I mean, she knocks Renee onto the floor, and she passes, Renee is knocked out, and I mean, she's not going to win any Mother of the Year awards.
Yeah, right.
Let's put it that way.
No. And Renee is still seeing, because now, you said Renee is encountering the mother, which then gets, so the ghosts just keep messing with little Callie in her crib. Leave the baby alone. Surprised that little girl is not more traumatized than she is. They make her forget stuff.
I know, man.
And then, the mother, she's got a mean slap. But even having seen this movie several times, Renee's run-in with her, when they actually encounter, is super intense. The baby walker and the stuff flying up in the air, and then it's just because that's not Josh. And it's oh god, this is terrifying. There is a malicious, malevolent spirit in that house that is capable of some pretty gnarly stuff.
It kind of reeks a little bit of Poltergeist.
Mm-hmm.
Just a little. Not a lot, but a teensy, a tincture, maybe.
Yeah.
A Poltergeist. Yeah.
And then when Renee goes to Josh, she thinks to, explain this, these things are here. We've got to go. We've got to leave. Which is interesting to see Josh, because it's Parker, saying things that he knows. It's remember, it doesn't matter where we go. They follow. And it's they want to be alive. And he's talking about himself, which is interesting. It's they just want what you have, which is life, but you're stronger. All these things are true. He knows this, but he's reiterating this to her to kind of pretend to be Josh. But also, it's just ignore them and they'll go away. And it's well, that's not true. It's yeah, sounds like something a dead person would say.
Yeah. Yeah, he was saying all the right things, but I think she still started to really figure out that it wasn't him.
The, no pun intended, dead giveaway, literally, was when the piano starts playing again, and it's playing this song that she wrote for Josh, and he does not recognize it or even care in the slightest.
Yeah, that is a huge giveaway. Because the real Josh does care. He cares enough to play it badly.
Yeah.
For his wife, to get her to understand. And it ends up being the thing that really helps her understand who it is. That Josh really is back.
Yeah, to when Lorraine appears to her outside of the car, surprisingly scaring the crap out of her, but telling her, you and the kids are not safe, that's not Josh, come with me. That she doesn't even argue it. She's yeah, no, that tracks, let's go.
Yeah, let's get out of here. I'm finally. I was glad that, 1, the boys were gone. 2, they took the baby somewhere. They were not allowing the kids to be there, but then, of course, the kids come home at the worst time possible.
Yeah, well, or best time, depending on way you look at it.
Well, true.
Parker's going in for that final strangle, and I'm and in comes Dalton with the baseball bat. He's ready to go.
That was so good. That was so good. I cheered. Yeah. I just was so excited. Because I forgot some of this.
Yeah.
Because I haven't seen it in such a long time. I really appreciated it.
Mm-hmm. But but for the time, everybody's gone because somehow, and we'll talk more about kind of team further. I've got more point about them, but what they experience and stuff in the house. But they've come up with this plan of, well, we got to go and, tranquilize Josh so that we can then find the real Josh and communicate with him and come up with this plan of how to get Parker out of his body. But Parker Crane is smart enough to know Carl's onto him and calls his bluff, which leads to, again, like one of the most intense scenes in this movie. This, well, Mother tells me you like to play with dice. And Carl's still trying to play it off, like thinking maybe he's talking about Lorraine. Like, oh, I didn't know she talked to you this morning. Yeah. And it's like, well, Mother, why don't you ask your dice what I have behind my back? Mother tells me you're very good with them back at the house. And that's when he's like, yeah, you're not talking about Lorraine. Other. And then I like, as you see, he's just terrified, but he's like, I'll go along with it. And he has a, what is Parker Crane holding behind his back? At that moment, he's like, we see each other for where we are. Like, no more BS. Just, yeah.
Well, in Josh's face, or rather Parker Crane's inhabited body of Josh, and his face, you could tell he was a little surprised. Mm-hmm. Okay, he figured it out. I'm wearing a mask. Josh, I'm really Parker. What killed me was I really thought that Tucker and Specs would have been onto this quicker and gotten to the house. Mm-hmm. Like, to me, they waited too long.
Right.
There were hints before that. And yes, I know that Carl didn't say, what was it? Unicorn, quesadilla. Whatever.
Quesadilla.
I think it's quesadilla.
One. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Specs thought it was unicorn, but Tucker says quesadilla. And I agree with Tucker. Quesadilla is a much better code word. It can be worked into a conversation easier than unicorn. Because he's like, when are you going to say a quesadilla? And he's like, I don't know. It's lunchtime. I'm hungry. I could go for a quesadilla right now. Yes. Where are you going to work in unicorn? And then what's funny is while then Parker attacks Carl while he's choking him out. What is Carl saying into his, microphone? Quesadilla, quesadilla! So yeah, Tucker chose the better word for sure. That's what he went with.
Mm-hmm. I really think that they should have come sooner. I think it was I just think they would have come sooner. I know that they're a little inept at times, even though they're incredibly intelligent. I just felt like they would have been a little quicker onto the situation, figuring out what was going on. I know they probably trusted Carl to say quesadilla at the right time. However, they should have been, paying attention. A little better attention. At least Carl didn't die, because I really thought he died. Mm-hmm. I forgot. Because I had, like I said, I haven't seen this in quite a while.
Yeah. Yeah. Parker, Josh. Yeah.
Parker Josh.
Upper hand. PJ. Yeah. Knocks out Carl and Specs, injects Tucker with the tranquilizer. So that was taken out. And then he texts Lorraine, like, oh, yeah, as Tucker or whatever. He's just like, yep, everything's taken care of. Which I think, like, man, when you're dealing with, like, those kind of situations, because that's been seen in a lot of movies or shows where it's like the killer sends a message from the other person, oh, job's done, come do this, or whatever. It's like, you should require a call. That's like the one time phone calls are acceptable. Is that it should be like, I need voice confirmation.
Exactly. That this is okay. What is the code word? What's the secret code word for the job is complete? Instead of it's
throw
done.
that into the text of, yeah, it's done, you can come back.
Quesadilla.
Yeah, be like,
or unicorn.
Yeah, the text should have been, okay, cool, come over for the party now. Make sure to stop by and make sure to pick up the quesadillas on the way.
Yeah, exactly. And this group, I just think they're smarter than that. Uh-huh. I don't think Specs is someone that I would pick if I was having some sort of a battle. Because he's not really able to do a lot of damage in a fight.
No. He kind of hits himself on the walls the whole time there. Mm-hmm. He's not...
Tucker did a little better.
Yeah.
He had a little more brute force, but Specs was just all over the place.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then that's where we get, when the women get back home, that we get Parker, Josh going full murder mode. The jig is up, no need to pretend anymore. He's bashing into doors, opening doors, breaking into walls, going full, here's Joshy. He's just, coming after him. Which, right before the boys show up, that direct hit with the tea kettle. Just, ouch.
I know. I could feel that, right? Didn't you know.
You almost, you just watch it and you're like, ah.
Ow.
Man. And then Dalton comes in with the baseball bat, like I said. And it's,
mm-hmm.
Yeah, and from there, he's going after him, trying to kill him. And we talked about kind of that end of how, he's taken care of there. And then there's another side of it. So we'll get to, again, Team Further, as I'll call them.
Team Further. Who is on this magical Team Further?
Well, I mean, it's the team that's working within that realm. So that's Elise, Tucker, Specs, even though they're not in the Further, but they're helping build up within Carl and Josh, real Josh. But
and
so
Dalton.
really,
don't forget Dalton. Yeah. Dalton came into the Further
he was there
at the right
end.
time.
But yeah, mainly, so it's like Elise, Carl, Josh are like Team Further that get a lot of that job done. So so I'll talk more about, the ending for Parker / Josh, I think, when we get to that more. But yeah, if you've got other thoughts.
On Parker, no. I have thoughts about his victims and how sad that was and how he was driven to it. But I think, Pake, you have summed it up quite well. So I think that we can move on.
All right. Well, I think before I go to Team Further, which I have the most notes, or not the most notes, but more notes about, let me backtrack real quick and do quick notes on the rest of the Lambert family, just because they're in there and it's like, okay. Well, let's go through. So Renee, we pick up, not the beginning of the movie, because that's the flashback with young Josh, but when we pick up on the modern events that are taking place, directly after the first movie, she's at the police station explaining the best she can the situation. Elise is dead, Josh is suspect number 1, and the police are having a real hard time with the supernatural elements of all of it, So you say there's this alternate dimension, and your son, or your husband was hypnotized and traveled to another dimension to bring your son back. And it's like, this, there's got to be like a, police investigation bingo. Like, that one's not been on the card before.
You know what? This makes me think of Demon 79, which you guys just covered on Strange Indeed, about the cops and the connections to the other world and, apocalyptic stuff. And yeah, I think that for Renee, she didn't want to believe any of that was happening herself, but I mean, she knew she sounded crazy, but it's what happened. I know she was grateful once Josh was cleared of it being his fingerprints, although only Lee Wanell knows why.
Yeah. Let's see. Pots, pans, wrenches, all the stuff that Renee keeps beating her possessed husband with throughout this movie. I am sure that when Josh does wake up, finally back in his own body, he's going to be really sore and bruised. What the hell?
The wrench in particular, she struck him several times with, and I'm quite sure that's going to leave a mark.
Yeah. He just wakes up and he's like, oh, it's back. I'm back. It's me. Oh, my boys. Oh, my wife. And ow, why do my ribs hurt so bad?
Yeah, while you were away, honey, this demon possessed you, and I kind of had to beat it with a wrench. And then other things, whatever I could put my hands on. So, yeah, that's probably going to hurt for a while.
Yeah.
You might need to take some Tylenol.
Mm-hmm. I did emotionally really feel for her. There's that moment that after Team Further does their thing, and Dalton does his thing, where, this possessed Josh, as Parker, is about to kill their son, who's not even in his body right there. And then he just stops and he falls over unconscious. And so her husband, who has been possessed, is collapsed there, unconscious in front of her, and her son, who she's sitting there holding, who is in a coma, practically, for so long, as he's out projecting again, which is what caused that in the first time. And she's sitting there worried sick that he's not going to wake up again. It's like, am I right back to where I started, but I don't have my husband here with me by my side this time? And you can just see this anguish and fear in her eyes. But her kid's a freaking badass, so he wakes up and his dad wakes up, so they're good. She's super skeptical at first. If it's really Josh, you really see she's like, I'm not doing this again. He's like, is it really you? But yeah, she does feel better when he mentions that he was playing the song for her, or that she wrote for him to get her attention, and that's where we get that great line. Should have known it was you. Only you could play it that badly.
It made me chuckle. I really liked it. It was a connection between the two characters that, they've had a rough 2 films. And so it was nice to see them have that little bit of affection, I think, between the two of them, and help her realize that, oh, okay, yes, it really is him. Because of what he put her through in this movie, I can see why she would have wanted to grab the kids and go, because how do you know this isn't going to happen again? Even with the hypnosis at the end, how do you know? Really?
Right. That's just gonna a forever fear that you can't get rid of. Yeah. It's like, well, I know this is a thing that can happen now. Oh God. Yeah.
And she wasn't hypnotized, so she had to carry this burden, and I don't think that was fair.
Right.
I think it's too much to put on her. Because she was the one who really was noticing everything was going on, and it seemed like no one wanted to listen.
Mm-hmm.
And that bothered me too. It's like, Renee didn't have a lot to do in this movie, but I feel like she was on top of things as far as knowing shit was happening, and it needed to be taken care of. But of course, talk to Parker Josh, and he's of course going to dismiss it.
Yeah. And then other family, talk about the boys, Dalton and Foster. Foster with his string and cans phone, this tin can phone, which is adorable, and ends up playing quite a role in the movie, as we talked about a little bit. This is just that's Foster's role in this movie, is he's the one that has the tin cans, and that's what he's so excited about. And then we get, Dalton waking up and hearing Parker as his father arguing with the mother in the hallway, which he thinks is a dream. But it was not. And then later on, while laying there in bed, it's like, Foster, stop waking me up with the tin can phone and sounding like an adult woman. It's so rude. And then, Babadook. Wait, no. Other ghosts come out of closets too.
Movie,
okay, there's other things that can come out of closets.
Yeah.
And terrorize astral projecting boys. We
did the Babadook not that long ago. There are other monsters in the closet.
Okay.
I feel like that should be a documentary that's on one of the channels like Shudder. The monsters in your closet, where they go through and talk about specifically movies that had monsters in the closet.
Yeah.
It would be kind of fun, right?
Yeah, it'd be cool. Maybe we'll do it. I don't know. I don't know if I've watched enough movies about closet monsters.
Oh my gosh, that is like a top 5, right? Side note, we do need to do more of those episodes sometime, because people really seem to like them.
Yeah, they're fun.
That's why our look back specials are popular, I think, is the list style format. I think people like it.
Yeah, it's fun to do.
But I don't want this podcast to become like a list podcast.
Yeah,
I want it
we like talking about movies
about the
too.
movies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then we talked about Dalton being just incredibly brave and smart, and going into the further to bring his dad back. Even Carl, clever boy. Another Jurassic Park.
I do think that this role prepared him so well to be in Jurassic World, because, he's going out and inspecting the further and being out there in astral projection, and it prepared him for being lost out on the island. With dinosaurs around him.
It's like, I've dealt with demons and monsters and ghosts. It's like, dinosaurs, I got this.
Yeah, exactly.
So those Lamberts. So then I just have, like, Elise and Carl. And our favorite
I love Carl.
spectral sightings team, Tucker and Specs.
I really do want that TV show with the two of them, because I think it could honestly be a comedy. At the very least, a dramedy. But I feel like it could be a lot of fun. It just makes me think of Wellington Paranormal.
That's exactly what I was going to say. Is like, do it very much in the style like Wellington Paranormal, where they're just out on these different, missions and different calls. And
it could be so much fun, right?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. And James Wan and Lee Wanell, they could do it, right?
Oh, yeah.
Guys, you've done a lot of movies. Let's do something on TV. It could be fun.
Yeah, I'm down. I'm down for it.
I thought you would be.
James Wan, Lee Wanell, you're totally listening to this podcast. You never know, honestly. We've had people listen. We've found out that there have been people in movies and shows and things we talked about that have listened to this, and it's like, oh no.
Okay,
oh no.
Yeah.
So it does happen from time to time.
It puts the pressure on a little bit, but only a little bit, because I think one of the things that our listeners probably appreciate the most is we're going to tell you if we don't like something.
Yeah.
We're also going to cheer something that we do like.
I know. It's going to be like, no, he is listening. If he's still listening, be like, hey, Lee Wanell, do this TV show. And he's like, I would, except you talked about all my plot holes in writing earlier, so I'm out.
Well, okay. If you don't want to do that, I've got another idea for you, Lee Wanell. Cooties, the TV series.
There we go. We love that one all the way. Man. But yes, so talking about this team here, again, this movie we talked about it enough, what we learned in the first movie, that with Elise helping Lorraine with her son's astral projection haunting issue, this old woman following him, getting closer, wanting to take over his vessel. Been there, done that, we've talked about it. The young Elise bit was throwing me off quite a lot. It was kind of weird hearing Lin Shaye's voice coming out of the different younger actress.
I didn't like it.
Yeah.
It disconnected me too much.
Threw me a little bit. I did look into that a little bit, and so I kind of understand why they would do it. I just don't think it lands super well for me. It's very much, Lin Shaye has such a specific, recognizable voice.
Yeah. Agreed.
That they wanted to, I guess, that concept across that, no, this is Elise, and we know it's a recognizable voice as Elise. So the actual, actress that plays the young Elise, it's Lindsay something. I don't have it right in front of me, but
Lindsay Syme.
We don't actually hear her real voice in the movie at all. It is all dubbed over with Lin Shaye doing the voice there. And yeah, it's distracting to me a little bit, I'll be honest.
Yeah. It was, and I tried to close my eyes and take myself out of it. Because I think the way they did the audio made other characters kind of match the way, because it did sound like it was dubbed. So I thought maybe they're just trying to make everyone sound this way, but I'm not on board with it. I don't like it. I'm not a fan.
But yeah, back in this time, this is where we meet Carl. Before there was Tucker and Spax, there was Carl.
I loved Carl. He was great.
And then for whatever reason, they kind of fell out of touch, stopped working together. Now this is not the only time we will see Elise and Carl teaming up, but that's for a later time.
Yes. I really appreciated how much he really wanted to have that conversation with her, and I feel like he got to say what he needed to say to her when they were in the further. And I was glad, because we don't see enough of it in this movie to really get the sense of what their relationship was like. I feel like, you could tell that they were colleagues, but he really cared about her and she cared about him. And they had a very intimate relationship. And I mean that in a totally platonic way. There was just this mutual respect, I think.
He was just kind of gone. And then after her death, he kind of reappears to help out after Specs gives him a call. Again, yeah, so as young Elise is kind of searching around for what's going on with Josh, closet opens by itself. Babadook! Again, no, there are other ghosts that exist, fake, in closets. Wrong movie, we've moved on from that.
We're gonna do a whole series of movies with monsters in the closet.
And I'm gonna think it's the Babadook every time.
I know you are. But we've got to work on that. That's a project for the future.
It's not all Babadooks.
No.
Ain't no Babadook, Daddy, that's Mama. Never mind. That is a reference that only if you know that reference, and I'm not even going to tell you what it is because I'm going to spoil it, but I love that show so much. Anyway.
Is that the Righteous Gemstones?
Perhaps it could be. Maybe. I don't know. Yes. It definitely is.
Just because that song gets in my head lately ever since I was in your car. It's crazy. It's like, I don't need this in my head, but it's there.
Just two little country kids outside misbehaving. Anyway. So we see Tucker and Specs at Elise's house. They actually live there too. Just, that is a thing. It's not really confirmed or talked about in this movie, but yes. They live with Elise. The reading room door opens. So Elise is there, willing to help them figure some things out. She knows what is pretending to be Josh right now. Hunter Ninja Bear. The updated rock,
funny.
paper, scissors. So it seems like it goes Hunter shoots Bear, Bear eats Ninja, Ninja kills Hunter.
Yes.
We'll roll with that.
Yes.
Yeah, Tucker and Specs loosely get led to the Josh Lambert footage, where they find quite the odd sight, where adult Josh is in the background, communicating with the younger one. What is happening? This makes no sense. Yes, they call in Carl, because they need to talk to Elise, to get some answers, figure out what's going on. So, her old medium buddy seems like a good choice. Him and his dice. Bring him in. And like I said, it's always good to see Steve Coulter. I love him so much.
You do like dice games, don't you?
I do. Mm-hmm. And the dice work well here. They do reach someone and lead them to some answers. I'm still, again, I'd like the timeline to figure out, exactly, did Elise help them at all? Or is, is the first time they see Elise in the further, at the old Lambert house?
I think so.
Or does she actually, or was it Elise that led them to the hospital and possibly even to the Crane's house, and then the mother takes over, or was it the mother the whole time? I'm still not sure.
I think it was the mother the whole time. I think the way that Elise met up with them, it just seems to me that she just heard them calling her. So I don't think that she had a lot to do with those other pieces. In fact, there were times that I was thinking, okay, it's the mother, and she's trying to take everyone away from focusing on Josh and the kids so that, okay, we're going to have Crane take over the world here.
The only thing that's weird about that is, why would she want to lead them to the actual truth, where they find out exactly who he was and what was going on? That seems kind of strange to me. I
don't know. I think this is a great question. We need to find out an answer to that.
I know. It's just, again, it's not the tightest writing, I'll admit. The fact that they realize, what's going on and how they, they feel like, oh, well, Crane's important to the situation.
We know that Lee Wanell can do better.
And learn the truth about his childhood and what he became. And then all this, it's just it seems very, why would the mother lead them to those specific answers? And then it's and if they found them on their own, it's a lot of just stab in the dark luck.
Yeah. Well, we know Lee Wanell can do better than this. Mm. I mean, it was decent, and for most other writers, it would probably be fine. I think we just expect a lot out of Lee Wanell. Yeah. Because he has delivered on so many occasions that we just expect that it's going to be better than it is. And I was surprised, honestly, because I couldn't remember what I thought of this movie. And most sequels kind of go flat. So I was surprised that I actually enjoyed it.
Yeah. There's a lot that I will complain about this movie with some of like the writing and plot holes and things. There's a lot, like when I actually have it like written out with notes and I've really broken down this movie, I realize I'm like, oh God, there's a lot that I have wrong with this movie. But still, at the end of the day, overall, I do really love it.
Yeah, there's so much to enjoy about it. I think there's enough of that continuity and the fact that they got a whole cast back and you're invested in the story from the first movie and you got to see a bit of the backstory. I think it gave a lot. There's just some, when a thread is unraveling, sometimes you get a few threads unraveling on like a shirt or a pair of pants. That's kind of the instance, I think, here.
Yeah, just kind of keep pulling on them, and I'm like, oh no, there's more. It's all falling apart. Help me. Yeah.
Yeah.
But there's still
we got a problem.
Fun visuals and good things. I mean, Rocking Horse Stampede, and
oh man,
and threats of death from a little boy in a wig and a dress. Typical Thursday. But yeah, then the mother of death, Parker Crane's mother, still has his hold over him, like I've said, and the team finds the bodies of the victims and puts all the little pieces together. He's the bride in black, and the spirit that stalked Josh, and all of it's coming together. And then off screen, they put the rest of the pieces together somehow. And Josh is actually Parker, and we need to put together a plan to send in Carl to tranquilize him, and all of that. Quesadilla.
They would have done better, honestly, to have like some sort of sharpshooter.
Mm-hmm.
Like, do it that way. Because,
right.
I mean, if you knew that Josh was potentially Parker Crane, you're really taking a huge risk going into that house to begin with.
Yeah.
I mean, that's real brave of Carl to do, because he could have died, and honestly, I feel like he almost did. They all could have died.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think I'm just kind of rehashing some of the stuff I talked about earlier with little things that I just, they could get moved past, whatever. Like, Elise, young Parker, destroying the mother. Talked about that. But yeah, somehow it helps because, at the last second, the mother is ended. And we see that pulls Parker out of Josh's body. Maybe there's something else that's at play there that also helps with that situation that we didn't see. Maybe. If there is, we can't talk about it here.
Nope.
And that's all that I'll say on that. Hint, hint.
Yes. Tune in again. Maybe another time.
Yes.
That could be discussed. But not now.
No. But yeah, so the family's all back together. And don't fear, Tucker's here to kick some ghost ass! Except, we're all good now, so. Yeah, those ghosts are lucky that they left before he showed up. Mm-hmm. They would have really been in for it if they would have still been there when Tucker showed up through that wall. Like, oh yeah.
Oh my God. See, to me, that's why I think he had a lot more ambition than Specs, who I think would knock himself out.
Yeah. And then that's really it for the movie, other than the very end little scene. The end of the movie, Specs and Tucker show up at this house to help a family with a daughter who's in a familiar situation. It's not astral projection this time, but it's similar. She was like, basically like, on an operating table and like passed away for a little bit, and they brought her back and resuscitated her, and something got a hold of her in that little time frame. Elise is there as a spirit to help as well. Only a tiny little Wednesday Addams can see her, though.
I know. So cute, right?
Yes. That is, if people who watch this and are listening and maybe didn't catch that is a young Jenna Ortega.
Yeah, she's
as the
like,
little
who's
sister.
the lady?
Yeah.
So cute.
Yeah, but and then we hear some creaking sounds that maybe are a little familiar. Something hiding in the corner of the dark shadows of the room. We don't see anything, but it sounds like Allison might have brought back a familiar foe to Elise.
Yes, and it's not the Babadook Pake.
Oh, dang it. Okay.
Not the Babadook.
Oh, okay. Not the Babadook.
Not the Babadook.
It's Godzilla. No.
I don't think so. Yeah, I wrote down when I was watching it, when I got to the end, it's like, okay, what is it? What do they see? Who is it? And honestly, I want this story. I want to know what's about this.
I wish they would have followed that. I said, based on some of those like sounds and stuff, like I feel like her reaction, it was kind of a hint that the lipstick demon is still around. I think that's what it was.
Yeah.
Is
he? Do you think he is?
I don't know. He might be. Somewhere.
Out there.
Somewhere out there. Tiptoe through the tulip. Man, this episode has gone on a little longer than I expected Insidious 2 to go. I know there's some stuff we'll chop around and fix up.
And I will, but my God, I don't think I'm going to take out more than like 10 or 15 minutes at the most.
Right.
So, no, we had a really good conversation. I don't think
technical issues took up that much time of this runtime, so...
No.
Why did I have so much more to talk about this movie than I thought I would? But I did.
I don't know. But I think it's been a great conversation. I do have one last thing I want to bring up. So they started, as soon as the first Insidious was so successful, they started discussions to have this sequel solved. And so when we discuss another movie, we'll have to look it up again because we'll forget by then. Okay, so Jason Blum insisted that James Wan and Leigh Whannell return for it. And so they worked on the script. It took about a year. And Blum said, as long as there was a chance that James and Leigh were going to write the second movie and direct the second movie, I didn't want to do it with someone else. So he was very, very determined that he wanted them to be involved. And I know we've talked about in this episode how having people stay involved throughout the entire run, even if it's just like writing or producing, it does help keep the continuity going.
So we'll do 3 and 4, The Last Key. Those are people who haven't seen them. They're worth watching once. Again, maybe more than once. I mean, I'm not going to say they're bad. They are very different. It's prequel stuff. It is Elise Rayner being alive again. It's kind of the early adventures of Elise. Not like super early, maybe just like 4 or 5 years before the events of the first Insidious. It's not much before, but
we do get Tucker and Specs though, so yes, that's a really good
Tucker
thing.
And Specs.
But we will not see the Lambert family again until the 5th installment, which is Insidious: The Red Door.
Yeah. So again, I think Insidious, the original, is still the best. 3 and 4 are interesting though. There are some fun stories, some things that are set up within the universe that are just kind of cool to build the Insidious universe that are in those movies. There's some fun creature effects and ghosts and stuff that they're worth watching, and we'll talk about them, and yeah.
They do know how to scare the shit out of us with the jumps. So, yeah. I don't think I'll ever forget Lipstick Face Demon.
Always one of the best.
Man.
Oh, man. Well, in perfect timing. Again, we wrap this up, so now we can maybe see what those who watch this had to say about this Chapter 2 of Insidious. So let's get to the feedback column. All right, we do have a little bit of feedback this week. Nothing for Insidious 2, strangely enough, but that's okay. As we did talking about this episode, if you listened, we know there's a lot of little things that are like, about this movie. We still really enjoyed it overall, but I know it's not everyone's cup of tea or favorite thing to want to talk about. But if you do have some thoughts about it or the episode in general, now that it's out and you've listened, feel free to write in, because we always enjoy to hear feedback on movies or even just the episodes, even after the case. So always call in or write in or whatever, because we like hearing from you. But we do have some stuff, like I said, that goes back to some older episodes, just in that vein. The first one comes from Alma Contreras, talking about that top 5 things that scared us as kids episode. A little feedback to the episode, like I said, where she says, that was a great episode. It reminded me of scary stuff from my youth, but also how I came to love the horror genre. It was also nice to know I wasn't alone.
You're not, Alma. We also had some feedback on the Babadook movie. Tony says, good movie, but that kid drove me nuts by the end. I kind of wanted the Babadook to eat him. Ooh. Yeah.
It's a little much, maybe, but also warranted. Yeah. Maybe. If you don't stop with the nothing in my hands, I know there's nothing in it. No. But also we have another great feedback about the Babadook as well from our friend Damien. Says, I really enjoyed listening to you guys talk about recovering from grief. You had so many interesting points. Thanks, Damien.
Thank you, Damien. That means a lot. Mm-hmm. Well, if you would like to submit your feedback, like Tony, Alma, or Damien, you can find us on Facebook and Instagram at Run For Your Lives Podcast. Find us on Twitter at RFYL Podcast. Email us, runforyourlivespodcast@gmail.com. If you're enjoying the show, tell your friends. We are available on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, pretty much all other podcast players, including YouTube. So go to runforyourlivespodcast.com for all the links that you're ever going to need. And give us a review on Apple Podcasts, as that is the best way to share the love and get us out there even more. We really appreciate it.
We absolutely do. Of course, talking about sharing the love, got to give some shout outs to things going on in the podcast universe around us. My other podcast, Strange Indeed, is on a little break, little hiatus right now. We wrapped up our Black Mirror coverage. So if you have checked out the new season of Black Mirror but have not listened to our coverage, you can pop over to Strange Indeed and go check that out. All 6 episodes. Or 5 episodes. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Season 6, 5 episodes.
And I loved also getting to hear your thoughts in addition to the people that called or wrote in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was a really interesting season, but overall I really, really liked it. So yeah, definitely check that out. And then lots of other fun stuff going on in the Podcastica world on the network right here. With a new podcast being launched this week. It is out. You can check out the first one. It is Welcome to the White Lotus, if you're a fan of the show The White Lotus, which I know I would be, but I just haven't checked it out yet. It's another show that I've got to add to the list. I'm getting there. Rima finally wore me down, and I binged both seasons of The Bear very quickly, and I'm already done with that. So always trying to watch new things. So I'm sure I will get there. If you're a fan of it, they're going back through it and covering it episode by episode. A non-spoilery, from what I understand, kind of treating it as if it's the first time watching each episode, where they won't give things away, so if you want to watch it with their pace. But yeah, Jason, Randy, and Jenny covering episodes 1 and 2 of season 2, so they're starting with season 2. Not season 1. Starting there. Yeah, so go check that out. I think they're revamping for a new season. I'm not sure. There's all kinds of new things coming, but with the strike and all that, who knows when things are coming. But maybe it's announced. I'm not sure. Again, I haven't watched it, so I'm not in that White Lotus world myself too much. But if you are a fan, definitely check out Jason, Randy, and Jenny's coverage, because it's Podcastica, and it could be great over there, for sure. And then over on the Revisited podcast, we have Ben and Kristen still tearing through Lost. They're in the final season, so definitely check that out. And then Ben and Kristen also doing some other fun stuff over on the Wilhelm feed with their movie swap episodes. The Scott Pilgrim episode was awesome. It was fun having kind of Ben nerd out about that movie and Kristen being like, what the hell was this? It was great.
Yeah.
What did you get me into? So this week's episode that came up, they are talking about We Bought a Zoo and The Tomorrow War, which is a movie we've covered here. So
exactly,
that'll be interesting. Very, very different movies. So if you want to hear, and it's, again, they each give each other like homework of a movie that the other one has not seen. So it's them talking about the first time they've watched a movie that the other person liked and recommended to them. So it's a really interesting concept, and I love that they're doing these.
It is. I'm wondering no, we shouldn't. Because I don't want Ben to think that we're copying his ideas.
Yeah, no, but it's a really cool concept. And I don't know, Ben, if you're listening to this, maybe you'll expand it past just what you and Kristen are doing. I don't know. I don't want to, like, invade on your jam, but it's a really cool concept. And if other people do it on there or something, it could be fun.
Yeah.
Open up a world to a whole different style. But it is fun. So if you like the idea of that concept, go check out their conversations on the Movie Swaps, because those are really, really cool. And let's see. Lastly, for Podcastica, Good Omens Season 2 is out. And yeah, it's great. It's a Podcastica / TV Podcast Industries collab working together there. So John and Derek from TV Podcast Industries hosting it, talking about Season 2 of Good Omens. It was dropped all at once, but they are going week by week on there. So you can check that out. It's so good to hear John and Derek talking about all the wonderful, delightful Neil Gaiman-y goodness of Good Omens. So it's been a blast. I love that show, and I love that it's back, and I love that they're covering it. And then also over on the TV Podcast Industry feed, they are covering Secret Invasion, the finale. Now that that's up, you can go check that out. And then they have also now jumped into this second half of The Witcher Season 3. And yeah, lastly, go shout out to Adrenaline Cinema, our buddy Mark over there, meeting up with Rima from Strange Indeed, my other podcast, my other co-host there, as they were talking about I know Rima's favorite movies ever, so it's great that she got to go on there and do that. They are talking about The Lost Boys, of course. Some vampire-y goodness.
Such a classic. I can't believe I'm calling it a classic, but it's a classic.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, so definitely go check that out as well over on Adrenaline Cinema. But until next week, we'll bid you adieu soon, but there will be something here next week. So what was that going to be, Daphne?
Well, Pake, we are going to discuss one of my favorites.
One of mine too, in fact. We both really enjoy this movie.
We do. It's kind of interesting because this movie came out 20 years ago. It's directed by Danny Boyle, and it's about a man who wakes up to a very different world. People are driven by rage, and they infect others with their blood or saliva. Those infected are transformed into another member of the Anger Army.
That's an interesting way to put it.
We are going to discuss the 2003 film, 28 Days Later. As I mentioned, it was directed by Danny Boyle. It is one that both of us really enjoy, and I'm surprised it took us this long to talk about it.
Really, that we've gone this long without covering 28 Days Later. But it's here. Next week, it's happening, so stay tuned. And go ahead and start giving us your feedback on that now if you want to, because we'd love to hear your thoughts on what honestly has become an apocalyptic, classic. So
definitely. I can't believe that it's been 20 years. Yeah, such a great film. So you'll hear all about our thoughts on that movie next week. But with that, we have reached the end of another fun episode. Thanks everyone for listening. I'm Daphne.
And I'm Peg.
And if you have to run, you better run for your lives.
Quesadilla!